This is the historic and beautiful town of Mendocino, set on the windswept coast of Northern California. This tiny village that hosts thousands of tourists throughout the year had its beginnings in the rich redwood industry that flourished here in the 19th century, home to loggers, fishermen, sailors, and merchants. Unexpectedly, it was also home to a sizable population of Chinese in the mid-1800s. The Kwan Tai Temple, a Taoist temple located here on Albion Street, which overlooks the town of Mendocino. It was built here in 1854 by the first Chinese migrants in the area. It was a focal point for religious activities, socialization, and a reminder of their roots. To understand how this came to be, we should first examine how and why this migration occurred. In 1850, a great revolution began among the working class of southern China against the Manchu of the ruling Qing dynasty in the north. The dynasty had faced a series of calamities, natural and otherwise, that led to widespread crop failures, famine, economic disaster, and the bloodiest warfare ever seen, leading to a staggering estimated 30 to 50 million deaths over 14 years. Conditions for the common people had gotten so desperate that peasant and farmer alike abandoned their lands and migrated all over the country in search of peace. For some, this escape came in the form of the sea. In the time between 1850 to 1852, farmers from the Guangdong province, formerly Canton, found their way to the coast and somehow got a hold of 7 sailing vessels. They set out for the strange foreign lands of America. These ships were called junks. Not a comment on their condition or appearance, but it was a reference to the distinctive rigging that these ships used. The Portuguese called it jonco and the Dutch jonk. In fact, these ships had been plying the seas since the 12th century. However, they were usually manned by professional sailors, not farmers. Imagine the sheer desperation of these people to flee their country on ships that they knew nothing about handling, let alone the complex task of sea navigation. With luck and a fair wind, these 7 vessels set out. In the end, 2 out of the 7 vessels reached the New World. One landed several hundred miles that way, in Monterey. The other landed, well, over there. Casper, 4 miles north of Mendocino. At the time, Casper was mostly uninhabited. With the farmers reaching the safety of land, they set about to start their new lives. Finding work in the redwood lumber industry that was thriving in Mendocino at the time, they served as cooks, servants, and performed other menial hard labor. In time, their ranks swelled as other Chinese joined them in Mendocino, and by the time of the American Civil War, there were approximately 500 to 700 Chinese in Mendocino, some having prospered to become shop owners and merchants. By the 1880s, according to census records, there were 7 or more Chinese-owned herb shops in Mendocino. There must have been a substantial presence of Chinese to give custom to this number of shops. In this new land, it was important to have a connection with the old world, so you can see why this temple is important to them. There are 9 steps leading to the door of the temple, a Taoist belief that this number of steps keeps out demons. The redwood was painted red to symbolize joy and good luck, and green to represent prosperity and life. The symbols in gold across the front, from right to left, translates to Mo Dai Mu, Military God King Temple. Not that they worshipped war, but in Taoist beliefs, General Kwan Tai represented loyalty and integrity. As we enter the building, we see the main altar, which holds the painting of Kwan Tai, there, against the back wall. The painting here is a replacement. the original having been damaged a while back in a gust of wind. In front of the main altar is the offering altar, where food offerings are placed to ancestors to receive their blessings. Here on the offering table, you'll find plates of food, sweets, fruits, bowls of rice, and cups of wine that are intended as gifts for Kwan Tai and the giver's ancestors. Incense is lit here, prayers are made, and paper symbolizing money is burned to ask for prosperity. Offerings are made on the 1st and 15th of each month, as well as on special occasions. By 1870, the temple had expanded, was now open 24 hours a day for prayers. There was even a priest who lived on premise. He had some rather Spartan quarters, right there in the back. Non-Chinese were not allowed in the temple because this was their only sacred space. Now, Mendocino was mostly tolerant of its Chinese immigrants, but in time, the anti-Chinese sentiment grew. Laws barring Chinese from owning property, from working on the railway, in the lumber industry, the vineyards, even doing the laundry. Well, these laws, they just kept multiplying. By 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act was signed into law, which barred Chinese from entering the United States, which added to the woes of the Chinese in America. The act came into law after years of simmering anti-Chinese vigilantism and fueled anti-Chinese violence. It's surprising that the temple survives to this day. All over California on a daily basis, the Chinese experienced beatings, robbery, murder, and arson. In nearby Sonoma County, all of the Chinatowns that existed at the same time as this temple have been erased. The only thing that reminds us of them are old fuzzy photographs, museum relics, and some newspaper clippings. At the height of this violence, the Chinese fled for the relative safety of San Francisco. As the violence leveled off after several years, the Chinese returned in smaller numbers to Northern California to rebuild their lives. As the decades passed, Chinese in America were able to participate more fully in society as laws were slowly overturned. During World War II, 20,000 Chinese enlisted into the armed forces of the United States to fight the Axis powers. When they returned home, there was a brighter future that awaited them and their descendants. In some communities, a few Chinese remained in Mendocino despite the surge of violence and live here to this day, including the descendants of the He family, who currently live here and are caretakers of the Kwan Tai Temple. The Chinese immigrants who toiled in California made substantial contributions to local agriculture, the railways, the timber industry, mining, and commerce. This temple is one of the few remaining testimonials to their footprint on this community.